All right, so Sean, how much were you involved in the process when UCLA was hiring a new coach, and it didn't go well? I mean, it's kind of like Indiana a little bit. I think a lot of fans have these kind of crazy notions that you're going to get like Tony Bennett or Mark Few again or whatever, Jay Wright. And it came down like Jamie Dixon, Rick Barnes, and then you end up getting Mick Cronin. And I don't know about you, maybe you were all in at that point, but I wasn't, because I saw a guy from the Midwest that was all about defense, and I said, uh-oh, could this be Ben Howland 2.0?
Well, listen, I did a lot of behind-the-scenes communication. Like the athletic department would call me and they'd say, hey, have you seen this coach? Have you what are your thoughts on them as a coach? And I would just be very honest and give them my thoughts. Now, I will tell you that I was on Team Mick Cronin before a lot of other people were on Team Mick Cronin. I saw him enough in Cincinnati, and I know Westwood well enough, obviously, guys, to understand that what they needed coming off of Steve Alford was some toughness and some grit. But Mick does it in a different way than Ben. Like, you know, the way the message is delivered, and both are obviously really good coaches. Ben is a tremendous coach. Look, people can say what they want about Ben's time at UCLA. He took him to 3 straight Final Fours. So if you take somebody to 3 straight Final Fours, you've done some really good things. And I think that we have to at least acknowledge that. But what Mick has done, I thought energy-wise, he would come in and ignite some energy into the program. And he did it. I mean, look at what they did last year after a slow start in conference play. They were a missed shot away from winning the Pac-12 conference last year. I just mentioned they were 2 out of bounds underneath from winning the conference this year. And in his first NCAA tournament, he's won 5 games and put us in the Final Four against Gonzaga. So look at the recruiting that he's been able to do. He gets in Johnny Juzang, a transfer from Kentucky. He gets, Peyton Watson, who's going to come in next year, who's going to be a one-and-done talent in Westwood. They got Amari Bailey coming in 2 years, the kid from Sierra Canyon, who's probably another one-and-done talent. So, you're getting a lot of real positive play in the recruiting world and traction in Los Angeles to recruit the best players. And when UCLA's had success, you go back and look at those teams, they had a ton of kids from LA, whether it was a Farmar, a Flalo, Collison, Westbrook. It started with keeping those kids home and not allowing them to go to your university down in Arizona and Tucson, Jeff. And I think there's a couple of things that work in Mick's favor right now. One is that the situation in Arizona is still not settled. The notice of allegations are there. I know Sean gets mad that everybody talks about it, but it's still there. And when Arizona's right, they come into LA and they get like 2 or 3 of the best kids out of LA and they go to Tucson. And then UCLA gets 2 or 3. Well, now UCLA has its pick of who it wants in LA. And because they have the pick, it's going to really help Mick. It's going to allow him to maybe separate himself a little bit here from the rest of the conference and be able to keep that momentum regardless of what transpires, whether they clear Sean or they have to move on from Sean. It's going to clear. Mick Cronin will probably be out in advance because his staff has done a tremendous job, really has done a tremendous job evaluating and finding the right guys to play in his system. And by the way, to the question in the chat, has Sean Farnham sold all his Under Armour gear? I've been a Nike guy for about 3 years now, so I don't have any Under Armour gear from UCLA.
The thing that's been really impressive to me about the transition it's not like the physical toughness. Like when you think about the Cincinnati Mick Cronin teams, you think about teams that play kind of the way they did on Tuesday night, I guess. But it's been the mental toughness and what these kids have gone through in terms of losing Dacian Nix and losing Chris Smith, like you mentioned, having rough starts to both seasons, being able to bounce back from the losses that they had down the stretch of the year. It's being down 11 at halftime to Michigan State and still finding a way to win. Like that kind of resiliency is something that I think stems from the coach and the staff and what they want to build as a culture in that program. So that to me has been what's been really impressive about this program and kind of how it's gone under Mick. Like I don't think that they bounced back from some of those setbacks under the previous coaching staff.
Well, they couldn't because they didn't want to play defense at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just such an offensive-minded philosophy and an idea. I'm just plugging my laptop and it's dying on me. but it was such an offensive identity that they didn't want to defend. They didn't have the grit to defend. I mean, look at the game plan the other night was brilliant. They walled up on Hunter Dickinson and played him one-on-one. They didn't bring the double. And there was multiple times I was like, damn, we got to change up our coverage here because he was getting some good looks and he even scored a couple baskets in a row. And I was like, he's going to eat us up. He's going to eat us up. But the walling up was good enough. And what it allowed them to do is stay at home at guys like Franz Wagner. And there's a reason why Franz wasn't comfortable. It was a reason why he didn't get his clean looks. There's a reason why on his drives, there were bodies and arms in front of him because UCLA didn't double Hunter Dickinson. They weren't chasing. UCLA never got to a point defensively where they were chasing the other night. Even when Michigan came back and took a 1-point lead, I think late in the second half or with about 8 minutes left to go in the second half, they hit a three and I think took a 1-point lead. You're like, oh my gosh, here it goes. Michigan's going to pull away a little bit here. And no, UCLA was like, oh, we're good. They walked the ball up the floor. They ran a couple double screens for Johnny Juzang. And we're like, Juzang, take us home. And they did. And there was no mistake about who Mick Cronin wanted the ball in the hands at the offensive end of the floor. And there was no mistaking what they wanted to do with the defense. They had a clear identity. And that clear identity is the reason why they still get to play on Saturday against Gonzaga.